18 grandchildren.
Your mother did that?
Atlanta. She was blue collar. Her family, her father owned a toy store, lived Freeland, lived on an afternoon, Lisa. And my mother, Lena Freeland Katz, works in a jewelry store. Mom went to the University of Pennsylvania where she got my father at Georgia School. And then from Georgia Tech, she met Daddy and got her MRS degree, finished college. She went 1 year. She's the first woman chairman of the Ahavas board.
Good evening. We are beginning. Good evening. We are beginning. And we appreciate those joining us online as well as those joining us here in the building. We have a couple of slight differences going on. Our tech advisor is not with us this evening, and so we're going to do the very best we can all by ourselves. But we are streaming, and there's power in that. Streaming means movement and current and energy, and of course we think of rivers and waters and all those resources of life. So we're engaged in bringing an element of life into our community. We'll begin with the Shalom Aleichem on page number 5 in the Siddur, on page number 5. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Amlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Borachem l'shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Amlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu l'shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Amlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem l'shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Amlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And on page number 11, Lachuna Ranana. Lechuna ranena, lechuna ranena, lechuna ranena, ladonai. Lechuna ranena, lechuna ranena, lechuna ranena, ladonai. Naria, naria, letzur yishenu, nekadma fana bitoda. Naria, naria, letzur yishenu, bizmira naria lo. Lechona ranena, lechona ranena, lechona ranena, ladonai. Lechona ranena, lechona ranena, lechona ranena, ladonai. Naria, naria, litzur yishenu, nekadma fana bitoda. Naria, naria, litzur yishenu, bizmira naria lo. Lechona ranena, lechona ranena, lechona ranena, ladonai. Lechona ranena, lechona ranena, lechona ranena, ladonai. Great is Adonai, a greater sovereign than all other deities. God's hands form the earth's deep. Mountain crests too are God's work. The sea is God's, for God made it. Dry land was fashioned by God's hands. Come then, let us bow and kneel. Let us bend our knees in the presence of Adonai, who formed us. The next page. For Adonai is our God, and we are God's flock, sheep in God's caring hands. If only you would listen today to God's voice and not become hard-hearted like the people at Merivah, like that time at Massah in the desert, when your ancestors tried me and tested me, though they had seen what I had wrought. For 40 years I was troubled by that generation, and I said, these are people whose hearts have gone astray. They do not know my way. So in anger I swore they would not enter my rest. A thought occurs to me tonight as we read this stanza. If only you would listen today to God's voice and not become hard-hearted like the people at Meribah, like that time long ago in the desert. Those people were stressed. They're in the wilderness. They had been chased by foreign armies. They didn't know where their future would lead them. And they wandered in the wilderness. So the first thought that comes to my mind is, what do we learn? What do we take hold of from our ancestors? And the second is, under which condition are our ancestors acting in a certain way and speaking in a certain way, such that we imbibe lessons from them? And remember, we too are in one way or another ancestors. And how are we conducting our lives? What lessons are being gleaned from us? Are we delivering a message to be hard-hearted or loving-hearted and soft-hearted? Arim shana kut v'dor v'amar to lev of hem v'hem lo yidu drachai asher nishbati v'api im yavon el menuchati. On page number 14 on the English side, on page 14. Bow to Adonai in the glory of this holy place. Tremble before God's presence, all who dwell on earth. Announce among the nations, Adonai reigns. The land is firm and will not be moved. Peoples will be truthfully judged. The heavens shall be glad, and the earth rejoice. The sea and its fullness roar. The meadows and all that grows in them exult. Even the trees of the forest shall sing praise as Adonai comes to judge the earth, judging lands with righteousness and peoples with divine truth. Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz. Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz. Yeramayam, 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 Umalo. Yeramayam, 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 Umalo. Yeramayam, 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 Umalo. Yeramayam, 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 Umalo. Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz. And now, in the Siddur, it's on page number 20. It's Romamu, which means lift up our voices. And Craig Talman is joining us this evening. In just a moment, Romamu.
Romemu Adonai Eloheinu kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu
And on page number 21, a Psalm of David, Mizmor David, on page number 21. Mizmor David, Habul Adonai b'nei Elim, Habul Adonai kavod vos, Habul Adonai kavod shemo, Hishtachvu Adonai b'hadrat kodesh. Kol Adonai alamayim el kavod hirim, Adonai alamayim rabim. Kol Adonai ba'koach, Kol Adonai behadar, Kol Adonai shover arazim, Vaishaber Adonai et arzei havonon, Vayarkidem kamo egel, Lebanon v'Sirion, kamo ben remim. Kol Adonai, Kol Sevavot Eish, Kol Adonai, Yachil Midbar, Yachil Adonai Midbar Kadesh, Kol Adonai, Yachol El Ayalot, Vayechesof Ya'arot, V'echalot Kulo Amer Kavod, Adonai Lamabul Yashav, Yeshev Adonai Melech Leolam, Adonai Oz Liamo Yiten, Adonai Yevarech Et Amo V'Shalom. And if we turn to the English side of the psalm we just sang, it's Psalm number 29, Mizmor David. Look at the center in the English. The voice of God with all its power, the voice of God with all its majesty, the voice of Adonai shattering cedars. The mountains of Lebanon and Sirion are jumping about because God is singing, and the mountains jump and the trees are dancing. That's the essence of this. For that reason, we're now turning on the song sheet to another piece, a more contemporary piece. It's known as Not Sure Where, Not Sure How. heaven and earth touch.
I'm not sure where, I'm not sure how. Maybe later, maybe now. Somewhere, heaven and earth touch. Perhaps it's only in a dream, never to be found or be seen. But somewhere, heaven and earth touch. I stop and look for miracles of better things to come. Perhaps I'm just too close to see. The miracle is you and me. I want to believe in a better day. I want to believe. I want to believe. I want to believe in a better way. And I want to believe that heaven and earth touch someday. In every laugh, in every tear, in every joy, in every fear, somewhere, heaven and earth touch. In every light of every day, in everything, in every way, somewhere, heaven and earth touch. We stop and look for miracles, for better things to come. Perhaps we are too close to see. The miracle is you and me. I want to believe in a better day. I want to believe. I want to believe. I want to believe in a better way. And I want to believe heaven and earth touch some place. We look, but do we see? We listen, but do we hear? We touch, but do we feel? The signs are there, they are real.
The touch of heaven and earth. That's our goal. That's our hope. And now we turn to L'Charodi. Shabbat's joining us at this exact moment. Shabbat is that doorway, that threshold between earth and heaven, between our reality and reality far beyond our own. And L'Charodi, and Craig joins us again with L'Charodi.
לך לך דודי, לקראת קלה, בני פני שבת נקבלה. לך לך דודי, לקראת קלה, בני פני שבת נקבלה. לה 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 לך דודי, לקראת קלה, בני פני שבת נקבלה. לך לך דודי, לקראת קלה, ומפני שבת נקבלה. שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד, אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשמו תפארת ולתהילה, לה 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 לה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, ומפני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, ומפני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ומלכה, כי היא מקור הברכה, מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה, לה 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 לה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, ומפני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, ומפני שבת נקבלה. מקדש מלך עיר מלוכה, קומי צאי מתוך ההפכה, רב לך שבט בעמק הבכה, והוא יחמול עלייכם, לה 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 לה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, ומפני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, ומפני שבת נקבלה. בואי ושלום עטרת בנה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה לך דודי לקראת קלה, ומפני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, ומפני שבת נקבלה. לה 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 לה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, ומפני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, ומפני שבת נקבלה. ומפני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, ומפני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, ומפני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, ומפני שבת נקבלה.
Remaining standing, turning to page number 28. You know, I'm fond of these last two stanzas. I'm fond of these last concluding stanzas of the Psalm for Shabbat because they're a testimony to the dramatic influence of your and my behavior. The righteous flourish like the date palm, thrive like a cedar in Lebanon, planted in the house of Adonai. They flourish in our God's courtyards. In old age, they remain fruitful, still fresh and bountiful, proclaiming Adonai is upright, my rock in whom there is no flaw. It's a declaration. The Siddur is confident that you and I are righteous, and we are contributing to the world to beautify the world. If you will, turn to page 29. It's a different psalm, officially Psalm number 93, but it's on the tail of the Psalm of Shabbat, and so often people assume they're connected, but they're not. But thematically, I want to draw a connection. It's a short psalm, together. Adonai is sovereign, robed in splendor, girded in strength. The earth stands firm, not to be dislodged. From earliest time you were enthroned, you are eternal. The rivers rise up, Adonai. The rivers raise up their roar. The rivers raise up their waves above the roar of the vast sea and the majestic breakers of the ocean. Adonai stands supreme in the heavens. In your house, beautiful in its holiness, your testimonies endure, Adonai, for all time. The rivers are talking about how important it is to appreciate the beauty of God's house. In your house, there's beauty because of holiness. The prior psalm says that you and I are creatures of righteousness and holiness, which means that you and I bring beauty into God's house. What is God's house? It's not only a synagogue, only a sanctuary. It's the entire reality of the every. And rivers are talking about how important you and I are to add beauty to the world with our behavior. Remaining standing on page 39A. Baruch atah Adonai, our God, sovereign of time and space, whose word brings the evening dusk, whose wisdom opens the gates of dawn, whose understanding changes the day's division, whose will sets the succession of seasons and arranges the stars in their places in the sky, who creates day and night, who rolls light before darkness and darkness from light, who makes day pass into night, who distinguishes day from night. Adonai Tzvaot is your name, living and ever-present God. May your rule be with us forever and ever. Baruch atah Adonai, who brings each evening's dusk. El Chai v'Kayam, Tamid Yimloch Aleinu L'Olam V'Ed. Baruch atah Adonai, Hama'ariv Aravim. And we are seated, turning now to page number 40. The second bracha, testifying to the role of love within our world, our universe, our reality, from God to all people. With timeless love, you have loved your people, the house of Israel. You have taught us Torah and mitzvot, statutes and laws. Therefore, Adonai, our God, as we lie down and as we rise up, we shall speak of your laws, rejoicing in the words of your Torah and in your mitzvot forever. For there are life and the fullness of our days, and on them we shall meditate day and night. Do not ever withdraw your love from us. Baruch atah Adonai. Ve'avatach al tasir mimeno olamim. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'avto et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'otecha ve'hayo hadvarim ha'ele Asher Anochi Mitzavecha Yom Olavavecha Vishinantam Lavanecha Vedibarta Bam Veshitecha Bebetecha Avalektecha Vaderech Aveshachbecha Vekumecha Ukishartam Liot Al Yadecha V'hayulet Totafot Ben Enecha Otapam Al Mezuzot Beitecha Uvisharecha. Few moments of silence on page number 42. Adonai Elohim Emet. Page 44, Michamocha. Umalchuto beratzon kiblu alehem Moshe u'Miriam u'bnei Yisrael lecha anu shira b'simcha rabba v'yamru chulam michamocha ve'lim Adonai michamocha Nerar b'kodesh, noratilot, osef eleh. Malchutecha ra'u v'necha, bokeh yom lifnei Moshe, zeli anu v'yamro, Adonai yimloch la'olam va'ed. V'ne'emar, ki fadarna et Yaakov, ugalo miyad chazak mimenu, Baruch atah Adonai, Ka'al Yisrael. Tonight, for just a moment, I want to pause, and rather than praying the entire Hashkivenu, I share a different prayer, a different song. We'll conclude with the Chatima, the last bracha of the Hashkivenu. But I wish to share with you something that we all know, but we need to be reminded of, that God loves each and every one of us. And God is here to bless us, to protect us, to lift us up. The words are Yivarechacha. May God bless you all.
watching wherever we go. Shine down your kindness, show us the way through every path unknown. Guide us with your strength, keep us in your shelter, fill us with the gift of shalom. Yivarechecha Adonai, v'yishmerecha. Yair Adonai panav elecha, v'yifnecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha, v'yasem lecha shalom. Guide us with your strength, keep us in your shelter, fill us with the gift of shalom. Fill us with the precious gift of shalom.
Ufros Aleinu Sukkot Shlomecha, Baruch Atah Adonai, HaPorei Sukkot Shalom Aleinu, Yal Kol Amo Yisrael, Yal Yerushalayim. Page 46. V'shamro b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam barit olam. B'nei u'ben b'nei Yisrael oti li'olam, oti li'olam, oti li'olam. V'shamro b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam barit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim v'et ha'aretz v'shamra b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam barit olam. Vayom Ashvi Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash. V'shamro b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam barit. Before we turn to the silent Amida, listening to you singing tonight, you sang Shabbat Vayinafash with a little bit of extra gusto. We need to learn what the word Vayinafash means. Vayinafash is a verb, but it's based upon a noun. And the noun is nefesh, which means soul. The context is that God rested and then God was soul, you might say, vayinafash. God's soul was not re-energized, because the goal is to be at rest and calm and in peace. But God's soul was, or God's essence was, re-nourished. by being re-soulified. And that's our hope, and that's our challenge. By carving some special time out of the rest of the week and saying, this unit of time I do differently. My behavior, my perspective, my focus, my intent, my involvement with my community. I need to vayinafash, I need to re-soulify myself. We rise a few moments of silent private prayer. The traditional text, page 47 to 52, a chance to re-soulify ourselves. An interesting article ran in this past week's newspaper. It described Zoroastrianism, and perhaps some of us reading a local paper read the article, which described and mentioned a worldwide gathering of this community. It's an ancient religious tradition, and as time has marched on, people have declined in their involvement within Zoroastrianism. And two elements kind of touched me, feeling a little bit of similarity, you might say. Number one, it's a very small community, numbering literally just 200 some odd thousand across the entire world, but people have lived in all parts of the globe and maintained their allegiance and their tradition to their ancestral faith. And the other element that calls out is that it is an ancient tradition. The article points out that Zoroastrianism is older than Christianity and Islam, but of course, it's younger than Judaism. And Judaism is still, and obviously very well known, the oldest monotheistic tradition on the face of this planet. But actually, I took issue with something that the writer in the article read because through my studies, the way I understand it, Zoroastrianism is not a monotheistic tradition. Zoroastrianism is a dualistic tradition. Dualism means two. And so now we back up a little bit and we remember that Judaism is a monotheistic tradition and teaches that there is one universal force beyond all limits, and that force, which we nickname God or Adonai, is part of the reality of the universe, transcends the reality of the universe, and is also accessible to you and me and part of our lives across our history, which goes back to the days of Abraham and Sarah 3,800 years ago. And Zoroastrianism becomes part of, you might say, in one way or another, the Jewish experience, the experience of Israel, as a result of the destruction of the first temple. When we Jews, our ancestors, are taken into captivity into Babylonia, Iran, and Iraq, and that's where Zoroastrianism is present and continues on. And for a good 6, 7, 8, 900 years, or perhaps more, depending upon when you're counting which happens where, before other migrations take place, we Jews are exposed to, and many Jews were attracted to Zoroastrianism because it explained a problem. Zoroastrianism posits that there are two deities, one Achimas and one Achraz. And Achimas, I believe it's Achimas, is in charge of light and good and creation and beauty, and Achraz is in charge of darkness and death and illness and suffering. And these two deities, Achimas and Achraz, are in constant turmoil and competition with each other. And when one deity is prevailing, then those elements are present in the world: darkness and suffering and war and violence and conflict and disease and loss. But when the other deity is prevailing, then things are good and beautiful. And I think that's why many Jewish people in the ancient days were somewhat attracted with and spirited with perhaps even adopting Zoroastrianism. And the ancient sages were very concerned. And the ancient sages kept trying to promote the power of a single God that cannot be diminished, cannot be overwhelmed, cannot be contested, cannot be beaten. And there's a glory in your and my being attached to that single, overwhelming, true force, which we call Adonai. And it's my understanding that this is why some of our Jewish traditions developed to give you and me a way of understanding who we are in the here and the now when we're walking about in our daily life, confronted by Zoroastrianism and its attractive culture. Because when you and I know how to say 6, 8, 10 words, and we remind ourselves of who we are, what we stand for, we can say, no, I'm not going to absorb and hold on to and be attracted to those traditions. And something simple. Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, fill in the blank. Baruch means blessed, and atah means you. And anytime you and I say Baruch atah, fill in the blank, what we're really doing is we're speaking directly to the one and only. It's not a bunch of used guys. It's not y'all. It's one. And then we say Adonai, which is the Hebrew word which means my God. The you, which is the everything and beyond, is just mine. And every single individual Jew can say Atah, Adonai, any number of times throughout the day, on any number of occasions, and know that he or she is speaking directly to the one and only, and that one and only is his or hers. And then furthermore, we say, Eloheinu, which means our God. And that reminds us that all of us Jews share this capacity for being connected to the grandeur beyond all measure, and it's mine. But I'm part of your community, and you're part of my community, and only the Jews can say Eloheinu, which means our God. And then we continue on, we say, Melech Haolam, sovereign of the entire universe, which again anchors you as an individual, me as an individual, and all of us in being part of the spectacular majesty beyond all limits. So anytime you and I say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, those simple little words, we're reminding ourselves that we're not going to fall off the deep end, dipping our toes into a foreign culture that asserts dualism, and instead, we can remain loyal to our ancestors, and furthermore, we can promote a message to our descendants. This is on my mind not only because of the article that I just read, but because of a phrase in tomorrow's Torah reading. And Moses, who's speaking in a very, very long speech, at one point makes one short line, and he says, at some point in the future, you are going to be living in your homes, and you are going to eat and be satisfied, and then you'll say a blessing. The Hebrew literally is achalta, savata, berachta. You will eat, you will be satisfied, and you will bless. And it calls out to me because every one of us hopefully has the capacity to eat. Will we have the opportunity to be satisfied with what is before us? Will we gorge ourselves, or will we exercise restraint and common sense? But furthermore, once we've eaten, once we've been satisfied of the body, will we appreciate what it means to have received these gifts? Will we bless? And it's that little phrase, bless, that comes after eat and satisfied, that really prompts the sages during the time, the challenges of Zoroastrianism, to create all of their blessings. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, shehakol niyeh b'ro, borei pri ha'etz, borei pri ha'adamah, and so forth. Achalta, savata, beirachta. May we realize what is before us. May we eat, be satisfied, may we bless, and remember that we do not need to be attracted to some exotic tradition with a very exotic and intriguing name. We instead may remain loyal to our ancestors, and we shall be a descendant. We rise for the Aleinu on page number 56. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'tet gdula le'otzer breshit, shelo asanu k'goyei oratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot adamo, shelo sam chelkeinu karham, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, V'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim, u'modim, lifnei melech, malchei amlachim, hakadosh baruch hu, shehu noteh shamayim v'yosed haaretz, u'moshav yekaro b'shamayim minimal, u'shchinatu zo, Begoven eramim, hu Eloheinu enod, emet makenu evesulato, kakatu b'torato, yodata yom v'shevota el levavecha, ki Adonai hu Elohim, Vashamayim mimal,
V'al haaretz, mitachat ein od. Kakatu b'toratecha, Adonai yimloch l'olam va'ed, v'nemar, v'haya Adonai, l'melech al kol haaretz, v'yom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, Shema Echad. In a moment, those reciting Kaddish, perhaps those at home are invited to rise as we recite the Kaddish. In a moment, we'll be on page number 58 in the Siddur. And in this Shabbat, we remember with great love Adolf Rossner, David Reiner, Leela Simon, Jacob Novoselsky, Anna Gollum, Paul Aaron Liebeskind, Dora L. Stark, Marvin Olinsky, Rini Block, Sid Marcus, Sarah Liebeskind, Bell Strensky, Aaron Fischler, Harry Zaremba, Minnie Maisel, Melvin Weber, Annalie Reddish, Fred Frisch, Thelma Carfield Miller, Sandy Gerwich, Blanche Feynman, Joseph C. Baer, Leonard J. Sibley, Eleanor Hyman, Barry Siegel. Perhaps there are other names to be mentioned. Again, those reciting Kaddish are invited to rise, perhaps at home. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabba. Amen. Be'olma divara chir ute v'yamlich malchute v'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chaye dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala u'v'zaman kariv v'imaru. Amen. Yehei shmei rabba mivarach la'olam u'olmei olmaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei tekudesha v'rechu la'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran ba'olma v'maru. Amen. Yehei Shlomo Rabba min Shemaya v'chayim Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imaru. Amen. Useh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imaru. Amen. We remember our loved ones. Remember those whose names are mentioned. Remember those whose names are not mentioned. And may all those who are remembering be blessed with shalom. Reminders again, of course, minyan tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. and Havdalah Zoom tomorrow night at 8 p.m. We'll conclude with a different song. This is a takeoff of one of the phrases in the Adon Olam. It's known as Biyado. Biyado means in God's hand. Biyado av kidruchi. May I place my spirit in the hand of God. Biyado av kidruchi.
Adonai li velo ira. Avkid ruchi beit ishan v'yaira. Ve'im ruchi yeviati Adonai li velo ira. As I lay you down to sleep, I pray to God your soul to keep in the shelter of God's wings. May you always be a blessing. May the angels guard your nights. May you wake in radiant light. May you shine as stars above. May you always know love. Biado avkid ruchi beit ishan v'yaira. Ve'im ruchi yeviati Adonai li velo ira.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, y'all. Thanks for joining us. May God bless you. May you know that you're loved and you're an important part of our community. We hope to see you, if you're local, at some point in the near future, joining us here in the building. And if not, if you're distant, you're still in our thoughts and in our hearts. May God always bless you. Shalom.